you beautiful land dwellers, and welcome to another episode of Ranking Every Version of, or Revo, a title which I don't like and would be happy to change if anyone has any better suggestions. So if you missed the first episode, I watched, ranked, and reviewed 27 different film adaptations of Pinocchio, in honor of the many Pinocchio films that came out that year, and I had a lot of fun with it, so I thought I'd make it a recurring series. This time we're cashing in on Disney's live-action remake of The Little Mermaid and seeing if we can ride that film's relevance to a few extra views. Or at least we would have been if I'd gotten this video out last summer like I'd planned, but personal circumstances didn't allow this, so I'll just have to release it now and hope for the best. For those not in the know, The Little Mermaid is a fairy tale written by Hans Christian Andersen in 1837, and it tells the story of a girl with fish legs who wishes she had regular legs. One day she rescues a prince from drowning and falls head over scales in love, trading her voice to a local sea witch to become human in the hopes of winning his affections, with the caveat that she'll be turned into sea foam if she fails. The prince takes the mermaid under his wing, but mistakenly believes he was rescued by a different girl from a nearby convent, and since he can't be with her, he vows to marry no other. But twist, turns out convent girl is a foreign princess who was just worshipping abroad for a few years, and their parents have already arranged an engagement between them, much to the mermaid's dismay. The sea witch gives her a chance to break the deal if she kills the prince the morning after his wedding, but the mermaid refuses and throws herself into the sea. Her body dissolves into foam as promised, but her spirit is raised into the heavens and allowed to live on as a daughter of the air, traveling the world and helping humanity with a chance to gain her very own soul after 300 years of good deeds.
Very boring.
The story has seen its fair share of film adaptations, but despite the title of this video, we will not be covering literally every version that's ever been made, just the ones I was able to find without too much difficulty, by which I mostly mean without having to pay. That said, I did have a difficult time narrowing down what actually counts as a Little Mermaid adaptation, because any film about a mermaid is gonna end up looking pretty similar. It'll probably be about a young woman, because that's who looks best in a mermaid costume. She'll probably spend most of the movie on land because it's expensive to shoot underwater, which means at some point she'll need to grow legs, and there will probably be a boy involved, because there's always a boy in the picture. So it took some trial and error, but I've done my best to restrict this list to just the films that are actually about the Little Mermaid, and not just a Little Mermaid. So that means no Splash, no Night Tide, no Scales, Mermaids Are Real, and sadly no Stephen Chow's The Mermaid, though if I had included that film it would have easily taken first place. We also won't be including anthology films or films that weave multiple fairy tales into one narrative, so no Rankin Bass and no Danny Kaye, nor will we include stage productions, short films, or TV shows, though I will allow for sequels as long as they're still in universe with the original story. So by my count that narrows the list down to a grand total of 14 Little Mermaids, only about half as many as we had Pinocchio, so I'll try to make the reviews twice as good. Also, quick side note, The Little Mermaid does not have a name in the original story. Some films make up new names for her, others don't, but for brevity's sake, I'm simply going to refer to her as the Mermaid unless I feel like specifying otherwise. But that's enough delay, I think we're ready to go, so strap on your best seashells and take a deep breath, because we're diving in.
You always hear people saying that they knew from the start.
We're starting off on the lower end of things with a movie shot for about 20 cents, mostly in people's apartments and backyards. This is a very, very indie version that updates the story to modern times, with the mermaid working as a dancer at a rundown gentleman's club. I almost didn't include this one because it feels like punching down. It clearly didn't have much of a budget, and I don't want to pick on it if it's just some student film that no one's seen, but looking into it, it's actually done pretty well for itself. It's rentable on multiple streaming platforms, it's got an IMDb page, it's got over 200 ratings on Letterboxd. That's not much, but it's more than some of the Pinocchios I watched. So since this film is actively tricking people into thinking it's a real movie, I figure it's fair game, and I don't feel too bad putting it last, cause it's also pretty gross.
Oh, you're still here.
We start out at a party that's shot like an antidepressant commercial. Everyone's dressed in white, drinking Coronas in slow motion, normal, cool party stuff, and the very first thing we see is a man going off to relieve himself behind a tree, still in plain view of his friends and also in plain view of a house that probably has a bathroom he could have gotten to just as quickly. He then sees a naked woman drowning in a pool, so he goes to save her, and I guess we're supposed to assume he's zipped up between shots, but the way it's edited very much makes it look like he runs at her junk first and pees all over her feet.
Are you okay?
And that's a pretty accurate tone setter for the film. The men are all disgusting, the women are all nasty and backstabbing, and the mermaid is never not sexualized. The entire way through the film, not a single person tells her that pants exist. The whole thing has the feel of a high schooler trying to be edgy. They shove it in your face that this isn't going to be like the Disney version, but then they spend way more time referencing Disney than the original fairy tale.
Poor souls. Unfortunate.
The script is bad, the acting's bad, the audio is really bad.
Oh, things truly wicked.
There's very little in the way of production value, no undersea kingdom or anything like that. We just get a couple quick glimpses of a mermaid costume right at the beginning. And it does look pretty good, but they only hold on it for a few frames at a time, so I'm guessing it wasn't as functional as they'd hoped. Instead, the camera follows the mermaid's perspective as she tells us in voiceover about life in the deepest, darkest parts of the ocean in a shot that's clearly about 10 feet below the surface.
There, where no anchor can reach the bottom, live the mer people.
Really though, I don't want to be too mean to this movie. It's not a disaster. It has redeeming qualities if you look hard enough. The shot compositions are kinda pretty, this guy's performance isn't bad, and it's actually got a really great soundtrack. The songs are all original as far as I can tell, and they're all totally legit. There's one at the end called Rocket Ship that's better than the entire rest of the film combined.
It's a rocket ship, so I could get away.
Otherwise, it's definitely a dud, but please know that I don't bear it any malice. I'm always happy to see independent filmmakers succeed. I just don't think it deserves to be one of the most accessible adaptations of one of the world's most famous fairy tales, so it's worth taking down a peg or two. Oh, and it also gives us our first appearance of this hot little take.
Not because of a man, but because of me.
But let's put that aside for now, we'll come back to it later. We talked about Golden Films in the Pinocchio video, but I'll do a quick recap. This was an early mockbuster studio that rushed out very cheap fairy tale films in the 90s to trick parents into accidentally renting their versions instead of Disney's. They cut corners wherever possible. Shoddy animation, minimal voice cast, barely feature-length runtimes, and lots of obvious mistakes like, say, misspelling the name of the author in the opening credits. Their Little Mermaid is a slight improvement over the indie version, but it's clear that this one too has pulled much more from Disney than from Anderson. The easiest way to tell is by how prominent they make the character of the Sea Witch.
So, the beautiful Princess Lena wants to see the above world, eh?
She's a pretty small part in the book, kind of like the cricket in Pinocchio. She's only in one scene, and while she's definitely sinister, she's not really a villain. She never goes out of her way to harm the mermaid, and she actually warns her against making the deal.
Don't do it. No guy is worth it!
So if she shows up in the first act of your movie scheming about her wicked plans, that's a pretty good sign you're in discount Disney territory. We've also got a knockoff flounder, an annoying dolphin named Vink, whose main trait is that he doesn't like swimming.
Do you have any idea how fast you're swimming? And I can't believe how much swimming! That there'd be so much swimming! Oh, don't tell me it's swimming time again.
A knockoff Prince Eric, who straight up copies Disney's design, except that with a cheaper animation he ends up looking more like Dave Seville.
Alvin!
A couple of knockoff Bluebirds instead of Scuttle, a knockoff Butler named Cosgrove instead of Grimsby. It's all so transparently plagiarized that it's hardly even worth commenting on. The voice acting's not bad though. As with Pinocchio, they cast just a small handful of industry pros to play all the parts, and the actors do manage to sneak in a little flavor.
That I love another.
Well, yeah. What? You'll have another?
But there's only so much they can do to liven up the wooden animation, especially since the film doesn't even always bother to match their voices to the right characters.
A sure sign that she's a mermaid turned human.
We better get her something to wear.
I kinda liked the Golden Films Pinocchio, mostly because I was impressed that they fit the entire book into 48 minutes, but Little Mermaid is a much shorter story, so I don't give this film any points for efficiency, and it feels like a step down in a lot of other areas too. The jokes aren't as funny, the classical music isn't as well integrated, and while it does also have an original theme song, it's nowhere near as good as their Pinocchio theme, which I still listen to on repeat and it just gets better every time.
Now the world is waiting just for me to try.
Make me proud, Pinocchio, and never tell a lie.
Yes!
I don't know whether I'll keep including Golden Films in these videos. I can appreciate a cheaply made film, but this feels more like just a sham product, and it's hard to get any joy out of being ripped off. There's also an Asylum Little Mermaid that came out just a week after the Disney remake, and I didn't even bother watching that one, because we all know it's just a scam. Golden Films has a little more credibility, because at least their films were drawn by hand, so somebody had to put in some effort. Maybe I'll give them another chance next time, we'll see, but this one at least you can go ahead and skip.
It's so enchanting. I'm trapped and drowning.
So we've come to our first Little Mermaid with an actual budget, albeit still a pretty small one. We start with a cute little animated recap of the fairy tale, then Shirley MacLaine shows up saying that's not what actually happened and she's gonna tell us how it really went down.
Well, I don't remember the story exactly like that.
So basically it's just lifting the framework of Ever After, which was itself lifting the framework of Titanic, which wasn't that original to begin with. But I don't really mind all that.
You're so stupid, Rose!
What I do mind is that the story she then tells has absolutely nothing to do with The Little Mermaid. It's about an English reporter who travels to Mississippi with his sickly niece investigating rumors of mermaid water with magic healing properties. He finds a circus with a shady ringleader and a mermaid who wows audiences at night but walks around on land by day, so he assumes it's all just an elaborate con. But once he learns that the mermaid's being held hostage, he attempts to intervene and in the process discovers that the world is a much more magical place than he first thought. But despite the mermaid and the storybook opening and the title, there's no sign of the fairy tale anywhere in the film. It's a completely different story. Shirley MacLaine's just spouting random nonsense at us. Like, imagine if your grandma was reading Little Red Riding Hood to you and then halfway through she put the book down and said, well, that's not how I remember it. And then she proceeded to tell you the entire plot of David Copperfield. That's pretty much what happens here.
Now that's another story.
So by my own rules, I shouldn't have included it, but by the time I realized that, I'd already written a full review, so here you go. Bonus Mermaid. And even though it's a brand new story, somehow it's still the most formulaic and predictable film on this list.
She was real.
The script is a collection of cliches, the characters are all cookie-cutter stereotypes, and every theme is explicitly stated in the dialogue.
There is nothing wrong with who you are.
You must really miss your families. I'm glad you have this one.
Man against a monster.
Who's worse?
By the way, none of the clips I just showed are the actual themes of the movie. Those are just pandering sound bites shoehorned into the last act to make us think we've watched something meaningful. The actual themes of the movie are 1. Don't be cynical, and 2. Believe in mermaids. That's the entire extent of what it has to say.
And I believe she was real.
It gets a little better towards the end. There's a kind of fun chase sequence where the circus performers fight each other using X-Men powers, but it's undercut by the CW quality effects and a villain who looks like a child playing dress-up.
Do not meddle in my affairs.
Oh, and for some reason there's also one random pop song that the mermaid sings halfway through.
Guess that's just the way it goes.
I don't know why, it's not a musical, this isn't diegetic, it serves no story purpose, but she's the Little Mermaid, so she's gotta have an I Want song, even though it's way too late in the film for us to start caring about her. I wish I had more nice things to say about this one. There's such a dearth of sincere fairy tale romances these days that they need all the help they can get, but this isn't the film that's gonna bring the genre back. I could see kids from a previous generation falling in love with it, like if they grew up with it on tape or if they saw it on TV once and then spent the rest of their childhood trying to find it, but in the streaming era I just don't think there's gonna be much of a place for it. It's a lot harder to develop a personal relationship with a random film than it used to be, and I doubt that today's kids will still be thinking fondly of this one in 20 years or so. But hey, hopefully I'm wrong. That's just my take. I'm sure Shirley MacLaine remembers it differently.
Darling, we better be going.
Look at her, isn't she glowing?
Return to the Sea fell right in the middle of Disney's direct-to-video sequel phase, and it's regarded as being pretty typical of the films from that era, repeating the exact same story from the original with the lamest possible excuse for a villain.
Ursula's crazy sister!
I saw it as a kid once and I wasn't impressed, so I was surprised coming back to it to discover that it opens with a very high-effort production number. In one song alone, we're reintroduced to all the major characters, we establish both primary locations, we learn how much time has passed, what's happening now, and why it's important. And the tune's not half bad either.
To the sea we go, down to a world I know. There's never been, not ever before, a child born of sea and shore.
The story is indeed mostly just a retread of the first film, mixed with a little bit of Sleeping Beauty. Everyone's gathered together to celebrate the birth of the new Princess Melody, but then Ursula's crazy sister Morgana shows up, vowing revenge. Now I'll give kudos to the writers here for acknowledging how truly gruesome Ursula's death was.
Ursula would have simply loved to have come, but something came up. You all shish-kabobbed her!
I like Morgana, she calls it like it is. Pat Carroll's back to do the voice and she nails it. She's having a great time. I appreciate that she puts in the effort to make them into two distinct characters while still sounding close enough to be sisters. That's a hard line to walk when the script does absolutely nothing to distinguish them.
Avenge poor unfortunate Ursula and gain all the powers of the ocean!
So Melody is doomed to pay for the sins of her parents, but Morgana can't leave the sea, so really all Ariel and Eric have to do is move to a castle a little further inland and all their problems will be solved. But they don't do that. Instead, they change not a thing about their lifestyle and simply forbid Melody from going into the water without ever telling her why.
This is the only way. Melody can't know about merpeople or Atlantica.
Like, okay, imagine if your parents were reading Little Red Riding Hood to you, and then halfway through they put the book down and said, hey, just so you know, you can't go north anymore. The entire direction of north is off limits to you. Granted, your house faces north, and your town's whole culture and economy are based on north, and unbeknownst to you, your mom is a northerner, so you and you alone will feel a burning biological desire to go north that none of your friends will understand. Just ignore all that. North is not for you. No north. End of discussion.
This is the only way.
So of course this sets off a familiar chain of events. Melody defies her parents, goes to sea, makes a deal with Morgana, gets turned into a mermaid, and messes everything up. Morgana takes Triton's powers, there's a big battle, and she, like her sister, faces a gratuitously horrifying death. I actually don't mind this one though. I know it's low on the list, but this is a big step up from the bottom 3 films, mostly thanks to Pat Carroll chewing the scenery, and also thanks to the songs, which across the board are much better than I remembered.
Taming the tides, swarming the seas, beware barracudas, drop to your knees.
I don't know why none of these songs have been reclaimed as Disney classics by now. Don't get me wrong, they're not as good as any of the songs from the original, but they're at least as good as the songs from, I don't know, Brother Bear. If I was listening to Disney radio when Titanic, Tip, and Daring Dash came on, I'd be here for it every time.
Tip and Daring Dash, adventurers / explorers.
Oh, I guess I forgot to mention, there's a knockoff Timon and Pumbaa pair named Tip and Dash, and they don't really fit into the story. They feel more like something out of a C-tier Don Bluth movie, but they do get their own song, and it's a total bop.
Dine with the best, dressed with a flair, climb every mountain because it's there.
I feel like the Disney sequels on the whole probably deserve a lot more credit than we've given them. If you'd never heard the phrase direct-to-video and you honestly thought this was going to be as good as the original, then yeah, I could see getting upset with it. But these films have been around long enough now that I think we can start extending them a bit more courtesy than that. We all know they're trash, but sometimes there's good stuff in the trash. You never know until you dig through. So if we're breaking this list down geographically, half the Little Mermaids I watched are from the US, 2 come from Russia, 1 from Poland, 1 from former Czechoslovakia, surprisingly none from native Denmark, but the most represented country outside America is Japan, with 3 entries, all animated, though all with very different visual styles. The quality of these films ranks inversely to the quality of the animation, by which I mean the prettiest of the 3 is also the worst, and that's Bubble, released in 2022 by Wit Studio. Worst is too harsh a word though, because Bubble is a solid picture, it just leans very heavy on the exposition. After starting off in medias res with the rescue scene from the fairy tale, we then flash back to establish how we got here, setting the scene in post-apocalyptic Tokyo where 2 teams are competing for resources in a life-and-death parkour tournament. The rules are easy to understand from the visuals, but the film still feels the need to cut away to 2 unnamed characters explaining them in completely unnecessary voiceover. Then, after the game, we flash back again, this time to the beginning of the apocalypse, where a different narrator tells us how the game came to be. And then finally we catch back up to the opening scene, having just wasted 15 minutes and 3 framing devices on information that we could have figured out from a single establishing shot. Also, there's an opening theme song that tells us how to feel about it. Now, as I said, the animation is quite impressive. It's thrilling to watch the characters hurl themselves through 3D environments Attack on Titan style, but when I say thrilling, I mean it more like dazzling rather than engaging. There's no sense of weight or danger during these sequences, the spatial orientation isn't always clear, every shot exists to provide maximum eye candy at the expense of anything else. The fairy tale is worked in when a strange new girl joins the group who seems to be from another dimension, and who might just be the key to undoing the events that caused all this destruction in the first place. Also, she's made of bubbles. Oh, we don't know that yet, though. Well, we sorta do. We know she's not human at least, and she's come into the human world in much the same way the Little Mermaid did, abandoning her own society to pursue the man she rescued, even though their love is doomed to end in tragedy. And the parallels between the 2 stories are kinda clever, but again it would be nice if the film trusted us to spot them on our own rather than just having the characters point them out to us. It's a shame because for most of the film, the visual storytelling is strong enough that they probably could have done away with dialogue entirely. Like, here's our introduction to the male lead. In the middle of the game, he stops, removes his headphones, closes his eyes, and inside his head we see quick flashes of all the things around him that are making noise. And then, without even looking down, he steps off the ledge and maneuvers his way through the entire obstacle course in a matter of seconds. Great, so he's got hypersensitive hearing. If he focuses hard enough, he can sense his surroundings and baby driver his way to victory. Without a word being spoken, we've learned his whole deal, so we don't have to spend any more time explaining the... no, I guess we're gonna do another flashback. I might actually recommend turning the subtitles off for this one. I don't mean watch it dubbed, I mean try watching in a language you don't understand. The visuals and music are so spectacular that it works best if you just forget about the plot and let yourself get swept away in the sheer beauty of the thing. Little Mermaid was never a very logical story anyway. It's always been driven more by emotion than by reason, and in its own way this film exemplifies that perfectly. Could it have used a few more rewrites? Sure. But at the end of the day, it still sticks the landing. The Czech Little Mermaid is the closest of any version to the original story, making only one major change, namely that in this universe, mermaids don't have fishtails. They just wear weird culty robes and then walk around upright in a weird culty way. Otherwise, it's a very faithful adaptation with a hypnotic atmosphere that pairs well with the source material. You can tell right from the start that we're operating under fairy tale logic, so even the strangest parts of the story seem to make perfect sense. It's a very scaled back production, mostly static dialogue shot on TV quality sets. The underwater scenes are conveyed simply by placing a hazy filter over the lens, and the only special effects we see are simple editing tricks like reverse speed and slow motion. But it all fits with the dreamlike style, and they really make the most of what they have. For example, the entire sequence of the mermaid becoming human is done in a single stationary shot that's less than 10 seconds long, but look how cool it is. It doesn't try to hide the fact that it's a 70s movie, though really what 70s movie does. There's some mildly psychedelic imagery, some leftover flower power in the costumes and sets. Not a lot of action though, it's mostly talking heads, and I could see some modern viewers struggling with the pacing. But fans of science fiction and fantasy films from this era will probably appreciate the more slow, cerebral style. Like if your favorite part of the Superman movie is all the boring stuff on Krypton, this one will be right up your alley. The thing I like best about it though is the way it explores the psychology of the mermaids themselves. Mermaids here look down on humans with a godlike superiority, not out of vanity, but because it doesn't occur to them that human lives could have any real value. There's a scene at the beginning where King Neptune sinks a ship in order to give it to the Little Mermaid as a present, and it's pretty terrifying to watch the cold indifference in his eyes as he sends sailors to their deaths. He's not a cruel character, he acknowledges that any loss of life is sad, but this is basically just pest control to him, and I feel like that's an important aspect of the fairy tale that's missing from most film versions. Anderson makes it very clear that his mermaids are not just humans with tails. They're a completely separate species with different lifespans, habits, and philosophies, and that's part of what makes the Little Mermaid's desire to become human so radical. Marrying a human isn't like marrying someone outside your race or culture, it's more like if your daughter suddenly told you she'd fallen in love with a hedgehog. And only by exploring that difference can we really get at what Anderson was trying to say with the story.
Dala bych všech svých 300 let za jeden lidský den. Ještě jednou ho uvidět.
Anderson himself did not fit into the society in which he lived. From what we know of his personal life, we can surmise that he was most likely queer, possibly also autistic, and considered by his peers to be moody, awkward, and utterly oblivious to social cues. He spoke often of the disconnect he felt from society and used his stories as a means to explore that sense of isolation, to be able to express feelings out loud that we didn't really have words for in the 1800s, or at least not nice ones. The Little Mermaid, more than any other of his characters, represents the pain of living in a world that doesn't understand you, and the desire to be part of a world that does. So if you really want to do justice to his story, that desire is a good place to start.
Look at this stuff. Isn't it neat? Wouldn't you think my collection's complete?
Little Mermaid 23 represents a return to adequacy for Disney's live-action remakes. After a run of critical duds, this is the closest they've come to recapturing what they started out with in Cinderella, namely a traditional, sincere retelling with a solid understanding of why people liked the original. Now, a lot of things have been changed, not often for the better. Like all the remakes, it caters to petty online complaints by attempting to fix problems that were never problematic to begin with, but unlike the other remakes, it never goes too far out of its way for these changes. A lyric gets modified here, a plot point there, but it's mostly minor adjustments. The heart of the film remains intact. There were only 2 revisions that I think really hurt the story. The first was taking out Daughters of Triton. The original film opened with Ariel missing her big debut concert, but here she just misses a small family gathering, which we're told is important, but we're never told why.
Where is Ariel?
This has a number of downsides. It makes Triton's kingdom feel less grand, it leaves us without an opening number, and it takes all the tension out of Ariel and Triton's relationship. Triton says he's upset with her, but he doesn't seem all that bothered about it. In fact, the whole way through the film, he only ever reprimands her like she's an employee, never like someone who's personally betrayed him. So nothing between them has any emotional weight. The other big change is that this time around, Ursula's put a spell on Ariel so she doesn't remember that she needs to kiss Eric.
No matter how hard that girl tries, she won't remember she needs to get that kiss.
I don't know what they were going for here. Maybe they thought the romance would feel more natural if Ariel didn't have an ulterior motive, but really all it serves to do is rob her of her agency. When you tell us a character's enchanted, you're basically telling us that they're not accountable for their actions, and that the person we're seeing isn't the real them. So for the whole time Ariel's on land, there's this nagging feeling that nothing she does counts as actual character development, which sucks because those are otherwise the best scenes in the film. There are some other little complaints I could make. I don't like that Ursula and Eric's wedding has been changed to an engagement party. It lowers the stakes and it insults the intelligence of the audience. No little girls watched the original film and thought they were supposed to rush into marriage just because an evil sea witch did it.
We gotta find a way to stall that engagement!
I don't like that Ursula and Triton are siblings now. It doesn't add anything. Nothing else about their relationship changes. It's just another case of Disney thinking more information is the same thing as more emotion.
Forget it, big brother.
And of course, I don't care for any of the new songs. This is true for all the remakes, but none of the original songs need to be here. They're all just watered down pop songs thrown in to pad out the runtime. The only one that actually progresses the story is the Scuttlebutt, which might just be the stupidest Disney song ever written, but to be honest, if it's a choice between stupid and generic, I'll take stupid any day.
So we gotta go before the sun goes down.
What? Gotta get ready for the big showdown.
Alright, that's a lot of negatives, so why do I still like the film? Well, mostly for 2 reasons. 1, Ariel is a great character, and 2, everything between her and Eric is romantic as hell. For as hard as the film works to address misguided criticisms of the original, it never feels like it's apologizing for Ariel herself. Every new moment they give her only serves to reinforce her values, not to change them. Like when she helps rescue Max during the shipwreck, or when she tricks the shark with the mirror. The original character was already brave and resourceful, we're just seeing a little more emphasis on those qualities.
I'm King Flounder, Lord of the Seven Seas.
Halle Bailey gives a tornado of a performance. She dominates the film and she had me in the palm of her hand the whole way through. I legit teared up at the splashy rock scene. But the best thing about her is that she's the first Disney character in I don't know how long who's allowed to have a good old-fashioned lovey-dovey, goo-goo-eyed romance. Ariel and Eric have incredible chemistry. Every scene they have together feels tender and authentic. The moment where she teaches him her name is one of the few times that the film actually surpasses the original.
Ariel? Ariel.
I would have been perfectly happy to just spend the entire runtime watching the 2 of them on a date together, and it's hard to get too bothered about anything else when they get this one essential element so right. There's a point where Eric knows he's falling in love, but hesitates because he still thinks he's supposed to find the girl who rescued him, and Grimsby tells him,
Don't be held back by what you think should be. Think only of what is.
And that's a pretty tidy metaphor for the way people reacted to this film. Everyone had an opinion about it long before its release, everyone's ugly sides came out, everyone responded to each new announcement as if the original film was being desecrated, but if you just ignore all the discourse and try to appreciate the film for what it is, you'll probably think it's lovely. Or at least I did. I guess this is as good a time as any to admit that I'm not a die-hard Miyazaki fan. That's not to say I'm not a fan at all, I think he's great, I just don't find myself personally drawn to his style the way a lot of other people do. As far as Studio Ghibli goes, I tend to prefer Takahata. Ponyo is kind of like Ghibli's Lilo and Stitch. Bright colors, broad cartoonish animation, a story that's aimed at young children but that trusts its older viewers to remember their inner child when watching it. I do appreciate it for that, but for whatever reason it just doesn't quite sing for me.
A goldfish? She's not just a goldfish, she's Ponyo.
The mermaid in this case is a magical sea creature who we're told is supposed to look like a goldfish, but that ain't no goldfish I ever heard of. She gets washed ashore and befriends a human child, and after accidentally tasting his blood, gains an insatiable desire to become human herself. The fairy tale is mostly worked in through her parents, a pair of nautical demigods who explain that the love between the children will be put to the test, and that unless the boy returns Ponyo's feelings, she'll be turned into sea foam and possibly destroy all of humanity in the process.
If Sosuke's love is true, Ponyo will be permanently transformed and the balance of nature will be restored.
Truthfully though, the lore all feels a little tacked on. The film works best when it's just a hangout movie between the two kids. The centerpiece of the film is a minor tsunami that Ponyo accidentally unleashes by coming to the surface, and after that we go into disaster relief mode, sailing through the floods on a magical little boat, watching survivors making their way to safety. It keeps a very light touch. We never see any casualties, and there's something very calming about watching two fearless toddlers holding their heads high amidst all the destruction, especially in the wake of real-life disasters that have been dominating the news headlines in preceding years. We've gotten so used to seeing these kind of images associated with hopelessness and horror, so having it repurposed for a simple little story about purity and resilience is very cathartic. The animation is nice enough, but again, not really my style. The line work is a little too loose, the food is a little too rubbery. My main gripe though is that I just don't think Ponyo is cute.
It has a real face on it.
I don't like her as a fish, I don't like her as a human, I kinda like her as a weird in-between frog chicken thing, but she's never in that state for very long. She's supposed to be cute in a mildly scary way, kinda like Totoro, but I just don't feel like she's distinct enough in either direction to be appealing, which is too bad because the script really wants you to think this is an iconic character design.
Isn't she pretty?
She sure is pretty.
Well, look, very pretty.
Swimming time again.
So yeah, not my favorite Ghibli. You need a few more raccoon testicles to earn that title, but even mid-tier Ghibli is better than most family fare coming out these days, and I'm certainly not going to fault a film that wears its heart this proudly on its sleeve. Good luck to you, Captain. Safe travels. Like Ponyo, this is one of the further afield adaptations. There's no actual mermaid here, in fact no sea creatures of any kind, but it still more or less follows the plot of the fairy tale. Certainly it's much more faithful than the Shirley MacLaine version. It's a modern take with a magical realist twist. The mermaid is a seemingly normal girl, the bastard child of a one-night stand, who lives with her mother and grandmother in a small seaside town, but who discovers as she grows older that she has certain supernatural abilities. Wishing for a better life one night, she accidentally summons a storm that destroys her town, again much like Ponyo. So she moves to the city where she becomes the housemaid of a wealthy playboy, this film's version of the prince. But unlike the dashing leading man of Disney, or even the oblivious but well-meaning prince of the fairy tale, this prince treats her like garbage, and so does everyone else. Not even her magic tricks seem to work out for her. Most of her wishes end up having disastrous ramifications, and the more the film progresses, the more it leans away from magical realism and into full-on absurdism, emphasizing that no matter who you are, the universe doesn't care about you and you're not special, even if you have superpowers. The film is a hit in Russia, performing well with both critics and at the box office, and becoming their submission for Best Foreign Film at the Oscars, and it's easy to see why. It's very much the kind of film that ends up on year-end top 10 lists. Youthful, edgy, a little whimsical, a little sarcastic. Think Joachim Trier meets Alicia Vivacca meets Roy Anderson meets just a hint of Buster Keaton.
Mom,
It might be a little mean-spirited for some, the characters are pretty nasty to each other, and the ending feels especially cruel, even for this story. But if you're going for absurdism, sometimes your characters have to suffer, and the film finds some clever ways to make us laugh at their pain. For example, instead of just losing her voice, this little mermaid spends much of the runtime confined to a giant mobile phone costume, which makes for a great visual gag, but also provides a layer of irony in that the thing preventing her from communicating is itself a communication device. The fact that it's also made of foam, the very substance all Little Mermaids fear being turned into, is a layer of brilliance I can't even begin to comprehend. If you're looking for a fantastic world where love conquers all and dreams come true, this is not it. The mermaid here is a loser, the prince is a cad, and fate is a vindictive trickster who will most assuredly bite you in the ass the moment you're not watching. But if you're looking for a distinctly modern story that captures the bittersweet nature of the fairy tale while still providing its own unique flavor, I can't think of a better one than this. last of our 3 anime versions may not have the charm of Ponyo or the spectacle of Bubble, but even so there's a certain magic to it that brings it to the front of the pack. It's the earliest film on this list, albeit only beating out the Czech version by about a year, and like that film it's very faithful to the fairy tale. We start off in live action, where a faceless narrator takes us through a Rick Steves style tour of Denmark, before stopping at a statue of Hans Christian Andersen and proceeding to tell the story more or less as written.
The tale of the Little Mermaid originated here, in Denmark.
The first thing you'll notice about the film is, well, probably all the weird partial nudity. But the second thing you'll notice is the sound design. The ocean is filled with electric echoes and vibrations and an outer-worldly score that suggests we're more in the realm of science fiction than fantasy. It reminded me a lot of Bernard Herrmann's work on The Twilight Zone, the kind of eerie, ominous music you'd hear in a story about the last man on Earth or a woman being chased by her own doppelganger. It's like you're being led somewhere you're not sure you want to go, but it's too late to turn around. I especially like the sequence where the mermaid turns human and all the sound cuts out except a few isolated instruments punctuating her cries of pain. I'm probably making the film sound much darker than it is, though overall it's still one of the more light-hearted adaptations. In fact, it seems like this must have been a big influence on the Disney version since they share a lot of common elements. There's an opening sequence where the mermaid explores the remains of a ship with a flounder-like fish friend, there's a high-ranking crab who serves the king, there's a couple of eel sidekicks for the sea witch, there's even a scene where the mermaid gets attacked by wolves that's just like the one in Beauty and the Beast, so clearly someone at Disney was a big fan. Also, there's this weird cat.
Now I've got you.
I don't really get what's going on with this cat. She's trying to kill the Little Mermaid, so I thought at first she was the sea witch in disguise, but it turns out she's just an evil cat.
Miserable little wretch. You won't be so lucky next time.
And she can speak to humans, which no other animal in this film can do, but it's not magic or anything, she's just a regular, evil, talking cat. Does this make more sense in the subtitle version? Someone please tell me what the deal is with this cat.
She won't escape me again.
Anyway, I really like this one. It's much better than it has any right to be. The animation is cheap, the writing's only so-so, but the one thing it has in spades is mood. It really lets you feel every painful step of the mermaid's journey. Her fear, her confusion, her sorrow. By the end of the film, it feels like we've gone through the same transformative experience she has. So when she's lifted up to the heavens with the voice of an angelic choir behind her, and not Rick Steves comes back to tell us that she lives on to this day, guiding sailors on the sea, you really do believe it.
She has guided the wayward hearts of men, and so she shall, forever.
Oh, and if you've been watching these clips and thinking, yeah, but what if I want a Little Mermaid with even weirder partial nudity? Don't worry, I got you covered.
Przed państwem córki dancingu.
Now we're talking Criterion Pick, baby! The Lure is a Polish avant-garde, punk rock, queer-adjacent, horror comedy, sexploitation musical that made a name for itself on the festival circuits back in 2015. I've had it on my radar ever since it first came out, but I didn't get around to watching it until I made this video, and I'm happy to say it doesn't disappoint. This movie is bonkers. We've got 2 Little Mermaids this time. One basically follows the same arc as the fairy tale, while the other has more of a let the right one in thing going on. They join up with a 3-person band at a burlesque music club and become a bit of a local sensation, both for their aquatic stage performances and also for the trail of dead bodies they leave in their wake. The mermaid designs are glorious. The tails are huge and fleshy and beautiful and disgusting, and on land they grow human legs, but with all their nether regions covered over in smooth skin like Barbie.
That's okay. Yeah, whatever.
It's very upsetting to look at and much too explicit to show here, so instead I'll just show you this clip of Dan Aykroyd in the Coneheads movie, and that should give you the general idea. It's a perfect cult movie, with more than enough wild songs and squelchy gore effects to keep a screaming crowd happy. The one thing I might say against it is that it is a little more weird than it is good. I don't mean in terms of plot or style, more so just the way it orients the viewer. There's no point of view character, no consistent tone, no rules for what does or doesn't count as magic in this universe, and the songs either don't progress the narrative narrative, or if they do, the characters still act illogically after they're done, so you never know what's actually changed. Like in one part of the film, the band starts to suspect the mermaids are killing people, so they knock them unconscious and throw them in the river. Then the band comes home and has a huge fight for unclear reasons. Then suddenly they're all unconscious and they sing a very creepy song about being poisoned, while another character, who I think is the stripper from earlier but who looks confusingly similar to one of the band members, comes in and starts injecting them with something. Then we cut back to the mermaids, who emerge from the river and kill and devour the first people they see. Then back to the band writhing on the ground singing about how this must be the end for them, and then suddenly we hard cut to the next day and everything's fine. The mermaids come back, they're also fine, everyone gets along, it's like nothing ever happened. Well, actually, first they bite off the thumb of the guy who punched them, but then it's like nothing ever happened. Now that's an unusually puzzling sequence. Most of the story is much more straightforward, but that same sense of disorientation runs all throughout the film, and it can be a little frustrating at times. I'm sure it would be a blast at midnight screenings, but watching it by myself, I don't really feel like I got the full experience. There just aren't enough emotional footholds to appreciate it on anything more than a surface level. But when the surface is this much fun, what more do you really need?
Oh, it's about that time. Oh, yeah.
It's a truth universally acknowledged that a YouTuber making a countdown video must include something terrible near the top of the list so he can drop some ultra hot take about why it's actually great. Now would be the perfect time for me to tell you that Little Mermaid 3, Ariel's Beginning, is secretly a brilliant piece of satire, or that it's so bad it's good, or that it got me through some deep and personal trauma, but I'm afraid I don't have anything that unique to say about it. The truth is that Ariel's Beginning is a great movie simply because the filmmakers are very talented and did good at their jobs. So as the title suggests, this is a prequel to the original Disney film. It's the last main entry in the direct-to-video era, and it's a much more polished production than most of the others. The animation is fluid and clean, the CGI is blended in smoothly, and for once the characters actually look like themselves, which is not something that most films from this collection can claim.
But they're my favorite.
The premise is that when Ariel was just a toddler, her mother died in a rather brutal boating accident, and she happened to be holding a music box at the time. So ever since then, King Triton has banned all music in the kingdom.
I will not have music in my kingdom!
It's the exact plot of Footloose, and it's very dumb. But to be fair, it was also very dumb when Footloose did it.
Oh, hi. Ariel?
So flash forward a few years, and now Ariel's a teenager, yearning for more like she do, and we think, okay, she'll discover that music is great, she'll warm Triton's heart, and all these stuffy, boring sea people will learn to cut loose and kick off their Sunday... What do you call them? Oh, shoes. But no, actually, turns out that's not what happens. Instead, Flounder leads Ariel to an underground club where it turns out all the sea creatures already know music is great, they sing and dance all night long, and Sebastian's leading a double life as a Duke Silver-style Calypso star.
My girl's name is Sonora. I tell you, friends, I adore her.
In a single moment, we go from a cliche Disney story where the protagonist is the only one who sees the true beauty of the world, to a diverse and eclectic community where everyone has their own dreams and they all work together to achieve them. Honestly, this one reveal is a smarter piece of meta commentary than anything Disney's done since. Meanwhile, we've got an adorable villain sidekick duo who want to take Sebastian's job, which makes for a nice low-stakes conflict in the vein of Emperor's New Groove. The visual style is creative and playful, it's willing to take chances, it never feels restrained by the original.
Don't touch me.
The characters are all really well written, we get to see sides of them we've never seen before, Sebastian gets a great arc, Flounder gets a great arc, there's a sentence I never thought I'd say, and best of all, we get to see way more of Ariel's sisters, and they're all a complete delight.
Don't look now, but dinner exploded on your face.
It's plankton extract and sea salt.
Pretty.
Every scene with them is full of fun, catty banter, each sister feels unique and lovable and unapologetically feminine. It is a huge breath of fresh air.
My brush?
Yeah, I was gonna talk to you about
lucky
that.
seashells?
They're not very lucky.
The film was directed by Peggy Holmes, a full 5 years before Frozen, which many misremember as the first animated Disney film to be directed by a woman.
Jennifer, I read that you're the first female director of any animated Disney production. Is this a sign of things to come, do you hope?
That's because Ariel's Beginning never got a theatrical release while Frozen did, but Frozen also had a male co-director while Peggy Holmes directed Ariel's Beginning entirely herself, and Ariel's Beginning is a better movie than Frozen anyway, so really this is the subversive feminist milestone we should be celebrating.
You think that small, weak, innocent, helpless little girl can do anything by herself?
I'm honestly astonished that this film is as good as it is. I'm not being at all ironic here. It's sincerely great and I don't know how I've been a Disney fan for this long without knowing about it. I feel just like Ariel discovering the nightclub for the first time. This wonderful thing has been right under my nose, and yet none of you ever told me. Some of you knew, some of you must have known. How is there a Disney princess film this good that nobody talks about? Everyone, stop what you're doing right now and go watch this film. And Peggy Holmes, if you're watching, you're a legend. Keep it up. If you saw my Pinocchio countdown, you may recall that 3 of my favorite Pinocchio adaptations came out of Russia. Well, it turns out the former Soviet Union is also responsible for 3 of my favorite Little Mermaids. In addition to the 2007 version, they made an excellent animated short in the 60s that didn't qualify for this list, but that would have been very near the top if it had. But their best contribution is this medieval take, set in the 13th century kingdom where mermaids are burned at the stake like witches for bringing pestilence and causing shipwrecks. It's clear from the beginning that we're in for something special, because right at the start we see something that's been almost entirely absent from the list up till now. Fish. Actual, real-life fish. And not just guppies, we've got some high-value marine life. Dolphins, jellyfish. For the first time in a live-action version of the story, it truly feels like we're under the sea. Then the mermaids show up doing a beautiful synchronized ballet like in an old-fashioned opera musical. We come to the surface and see a ship spectacularly lit up against the night sky. We climb on board and hear the sailors singing a killer sea shanty. Take notes, people, this is how it's done. It's not the most faithful adaptation. There are lots of new characters and plot threads. The protagonist is a traveling handyman who tries to help the mermaid on her quest, and instead of a love triangle like in the fairy tale, this time they find themselves in a sort of love pentagon. But despite the changes, it feels truer to the spirit of Anderson's story than most other versions. There's a sense of awe for the beauty of the world that I'm sure the author would have loved, especially in the scene where the mermaid first comes to land and sees all the miraculous things that human hands and minds have created. You can feel Anderson's fingerprints in every little detail here, and I can't think of any image that captures his work better than this shot of the mermaid seeing her reflection for the first time.
Ах, кто сказал, что жизнь прекрасна? Был кое в чем, конечно, прав.
The film is only 78 minutes long, but there's a depth and nuance to it that makes it feel more like a great literary epic than a simple fairy tale. The plot lines are elegantly woven together, masking their complexity in tight, efficient story beats. The visuals are rich with style and personality, every frame bursts with energy, and the characters feel immortal, as if they'll continue telling this story again and again for generations to come.
Это было давние-давние времена, когда еще даже дилижансов не было.
By any metric, this is the best of the live-action versions. As a comedy, it's the funniest. As a romance, it's the most heartbreaking. It's got the best songs, the best costumes. It's got dancing, dueling, jousting. It's got a big slob of a sea witch who steals every scene she's in. It's got everything. But who cares? No big deal. I want more. It probably comes as no surprise to see Disney at the top of this list, but some of you may have had your doubts since this film does tend to catch a fair amount of flack, especially for its protagonist. Ariel? Detractors complain about Ariel's immaturity and call her a bad role model compared to more traditionally strong Disney princesses, while literary purists claim that Disney sanitized the fairy tale and muddled its message by giving it a happy ending. Now, someday I do plan to do a full deep dive into all the facets of this film and its place in Disney history, but this video is just about its place in Little Mermaid history. So to prove to you that this is the best version of this story, I'd like to start by proving why Ariel is the best version of this character. And in order to do that, we'll need to take a quick detour to address the one complaint that comes up more than any other.
Little Mermaid. I mean, the songs are great, but do not give your voice up for a man.
Does the Little Mermaid give up her voice for a man? Yes. Sorta. Also for a human soul, but yeah, the man is a pretty big part of it. It's a cautionary tale, see? That's the whole point. It's an allegory for the irrationality of teen romance. The mermaid is young, she's hot-headed, she makes a foolish decision, and she suffers the consequences for not thinking it through. But because of her goodness, she's given a second chance, the opportunity to gain an eternal soul after 300 years of service. A hard lesson, but not a hopeless one. If you assume the first person you fall for is your soulmate, you're probably gonna end up heartbroken. But if you take the time to grow as a person, deepen your understanding of the world and your place within it, eventually you'll gain the fulfillment of love whether or not you find an actual lover. So yes, she does it for a man, and no, it's not problematic. Now, does Ariel give up her voice for a man? No, that's not her motivation. Ariel wants to be human, and she still would even if the prince didn't exist. This is repeatedly established in every single scene she's in, including those before she ever lays eyes on Prince Eric. We see it when she explores the ship, we see it when she argues with her father, we see it in her big I Want song, you know, the one that tells us what she wants in life and makes us fall in love with her and root for her to get it for the rest of the night. All these scenes come before any notion of romance is introduced, so even casual viewers will understand that she's after something much deeper than just Prince Charming. She's got a dream, he's not part of it. Now when she does see him, he slides into that dream pretty nicely, but even then he's still just a cherry on top of the sundae, a symbol of her desire, not the desire itself. That's why she gets so upset when the symbol is destroyed. Nothing's actually changed in this scene. Her odds of getting together with him are exactly the same as they were before, but what crushes her is being confronted with how bad those odds really are. That this entire world she's been imagining for herself was nothing more than a pile of trash that could be cleared away in a single moment. Only then does she go to Ursula. Only then does she discover that becoming human is actually possible. Only then do we hear controversial phrases like, "It's she who holds her tongue who gets a man," a statement by the villain which the entire rest of the film then goes on to disprove.
Oh. Then you couldn't be who I thought.
But up until then, it's made perfectly clear that Eric is not the driving force in Ariel's narrative. He's just a convenient way for her to visualize her dream coming true. And sure, she falls in love with him, but who wouldn't? He's dreamy. He looks good sitting in her collection of thingamabobs, but only because he happens to be the nicest bob to look at. If dinglehoppers were as pretty as princes, he never would have stood a chance. So does that make Ariel a strong character? Well, I'd argue there's no reason she needs to be. Being strong doesn't itself make you a good person, and being a good person doesn't make you a good character. There's no shortage of strong female Disney characters, most of them are monsters, but somehow, somewhere, the notion took hold that Disney princesses must be unfailingly good role models, a role that's never once been imposed on a male Disney character.
I thought not.
But Ariel is a good character. She's bold and adventurous, relentlessly curious, a loyal friend, and a super fun date. She's also flawed and interesting in believable ways. She's impulsive, she's melodramatic, she's unreliable. She'll just swim her ass away right when you're putting on a big show for her.
Ariel?
Characters are more than just a bulleted list of the choices they make. The texture matters, the romance matters. We relate to their faults, feel like we really know them, and fall in love with them in real time. And it's impossible not to fall in love with Ariel. At least, not after you hear this.
I want to be where the people are. I want to see.
The real reason Ariel stands above the crowd mostly comes down to one song. Part of Your World was almost cut from the film after a few kids got bored during a test screening and Jeffrey Katzenberg panicked, and Howard Ashman had to fight tooth and nail to keep it in. He argued that it was the key to understanding Ariel's character, and he's absolutely right. If your protagonist wants something that no one else cares about, you've got to give us some sort of emotional explanation as to why, otherwise it just seems random. Incidentally, that's also why Ratatouille works better as a musical. The motivations are much more compelling in song.
Anyone can cook.
Anyone can cook.
But lots of bad characters have I Want songs. In fact, most of the Little Mermaids we've discussed have I Want songs, and none of them hold a candle to this one. So what makes Part of Your World so special? Well, if I had to sum it up in one word, I'd say it's because it's specific. It's actually about something. It lays out in very literal terms exactly what Ariel wants and exactly why. And this may not sound like a big deal, but it's surprisingly rare, even for Disney. Disney's given us many I Want songs since this one, but as time has gone on, fewer and fewer of them have actually told us what the characters want. Rather, they just tell us they want something. Something big and abstract that they can't really describe. And the less clear they are about their desire, the less powerful their songs tend to feel, regardless of the quality of the music itself. This is also the reason none of the original songs from Disney's live-action remakes work. They sand down all the specificity so they can be lifted right out of the story and onto the radio. But songs that try to apply to everything at once end up being about nothing. None of these songs has had any lasting cultural impact or become a standalone hit. Whereas when Disney does give us a song that's embedded firmly in its story, we get this.
We
Don't talk about Bruno, no, no, no.
Arguably the most popular song in Disney history, despite the fact that not a single lyric can be divorced from the film it's in. See, human beings are capable of empathy. They can hear a song or watch a film or read a story about someone whose life is different from theirs and still feel for the emotions that person is going through. Part of your world resonates with people not because they relate to Ariel's words, but because they relate to her desire, and that desire feels real because it's simple and personal, which makes it much more human. None of us have ever been through what Ariel goes through, though some have come closer than others, but we can all relate to the feeling that there might be a better world for us than the one we're currently living in, that it's not really so far off as it seems, and that the simplest thing might hold the ticket to the life we always dreamed of. But if you take away that specificity, if you give us a character with no lived experiences who sings about wanting more without knowing what more is, they'll sound a lot less like Charlie Bucket and a lot more like Veruca Salt.
I want the world. I want the whole world.
So now, keeping all that in mind, I'd like you to close your eyes for a moment. Don't actually close your eyes, keep watching, but imagine yourself closing your eyes and picture yourself at the debut of Disney's Little Mermaid in 1989. You grew up reading the story and you can't wait to see what Disney does with it, and sure enough, the simple words on the page have been transformed into stunning animation. Everything looks gorgeous, the music is beautiful, you're lifted out of your seat and into a magical undersea kingdom. But then, about 15 minutes in, everything stops. The film slows down, the fantasy fades into the background, and we focus in on one sad girl, looking not at a faraway castle or majestic countryside, but of all things, at a fork. An ordinary three-pronged utensil slightly bent from overuse, and she begins to sing about what she wants. And what she wants is so mundane it's almost comical. She wants trinkets and corkscrews, buckets and boxes, little things that we all see every day but that somehow fill her with more wonder than you even realized was possible. She wants to dance and run and feel the grass beneath her feet. She wants to learn the names for all these silly things that no one else seems to care about. And as you listen, you realize that this isn't a metaphorical fairy tale character, but a real teenager. A regular child whose desires are so simple she can practically hold them in her hand. And you remember that not so very long ago, you had a dream too. Not a vague, far-off dream, but something very literal and possibly even attainable. Something just outside your reach, but that you knew could bring you eternal happiness if you could only get just a little bit closer. And your heart begins to fill up as you watch her hand rise towards the surface, because all you want to do is reach down and grab it. You want to pull her up to land and show her all those things she loves. Dance with her, read to her, tell her that dreams do come true. You want her to get what she wants. You want it so badly you might die. And then, you remember what story you're watching. You already know where this is going. This isn't the tale of the girl who gets everything she ever wanted. It's the cautionary tale, the one about learning the hard way that what you want as a teenager doesn't matter. Your childhood dreams won't come true. Real life doesn't work that way, and no matter how much the Little Mermaid wants to become part of our world, she's predestined never to get there. And a wave of dread hits you as the film nears its conclusion. You cover your eyes and grit your teeth, and you wait for that inevitable moment when the prince breaks her heart. And you wait, and you wait, and it never comes. The prince returns her love. The spell is broken. Somehow, miraculously, she sails off into the sunset, happily ever after. And your poor little heart explodes. Disney didn't change the ending to water it down for kids. They did it to rescue the Little Mermaid from her own narrative. For over 100 years, she's been a figure of longing and sorrow, a statue eternally in tears. But remember, that's not where Anderson left her. His story ended with the mermaid as a daughter of the air, working her way towards a human soul. And now, she finally has one. Someone finally took her hand and made all her dreams come true. And we know they'll come true because we know exactly what they are. We know she'll dance. We know she'll run. We know she'll finally learn what it is about all these dumb little objects that shakes her to the core. Why the thought of losing them, even for a second, feels like losing a part of herself. What's a fire, and why does it burn? There's something aflame inside of her, and she can't describe it, not because it's indescribable, but because she literally doesn't know the words. But she can learn them. She's got time now. And I really hope she does. The Little Mermaid is a fairy tale written by Hans Christian Andersen in 1837. It tells the story of a girl with fish legs who wishes she had regular legs. It couldn't possibly mean anything more than that. Except, of course, for the one thing it means to you.
I'm in a world so strange and new, a world so sweet and fair. My happiness will always be to see him standing there. The stars are brighter in the sky, the blossoms on the tree. I notice all these lovely things because he noticed me. Oh, the birds sing a little sweeter, the buds blossom on the tree, and my heart beats a little faster because he loves me. Though his love lies so deep inside him, yet true lovers we will be, and I'll spend all my life beside